Evelyn slid a black ledger beneath Luca's gun, and every man at the table stopped breathing. The pistol's steel scraped across polished walnut, a thin metallic shriek cutting through the low hum of the 47th floor conference room. White city lights burned beyond the glass walls. The air conditioning blew cold enough to tighten the skin on Evelyn Hart's arms, but a line of heat still gathered beneath the collar of her navy blouse. Luca Moretti stood across from her in a tailored black suit, one hand resting beside the termination papers he had come to make her sign. 2 bodyguards guarded the door. 6 senior executives sat rigid beneath a chandelier of smoked crystal, their cologne mixing with the bitter scent of untouched espresso. 7 minutes, Luca said. His voice was quiet, but the digital clock on the wall seemed to grow louder after it. That is what you asked for. Evelyn remained standing. The leather chair behind her had been chosen for someone narrower, like most things in the Moretti corporate tower, but she did not shift or fold her curvy frame to make anyone comfortable. She placed a brass casino chip on top of the ledger. A dark red thumbprint stained its gold edge. Luca's eyes dropped to it. Not his gun. Not the reports. The chip. That came from the belladonna, he said. Evelyn opened the ledger. Its thick paper whispered beneath her fingers. Every page carried columns written in her precise hand: transfers, shell companies, loan guarantees, insurance claims. The belladonna reported an $18 million loss last quarter, she said. Your shipping division reported $26 million. Real estate lost another 34. Adrian Vale, the chief financial officer seated near Luca, gave a dry laugh. His silver cuff links clicked against the table. She knows the numbers she manipulated. Impressive. Evelyn did not look at him. She pushed the ledger 6 inches closer to Luca. Those are not your losses. A vein moved once along Luca's jaw. Rain from an earlier storm ticked against the windows, soft and irregular, while somewhere below, a siren faded into Manhattan traffic. Choose your next words carefully, he said. Evelyn turned to a page marked with a red ribbon. The money was never stolen from you. It was spent. On what? Judges, port inspectors, 3 members of your security detail, a private intelligence firm in Virginia, and someone with access to your travel routes. One of the bodyguards shifted. His holster creaked beneath his jacket. Luca did not turn around. He watched Evelyn with dark, unwavering eyes, as though the room had emptied and left only the 2 of them. She tapped the stained casino chip. This was found in the executive elevator at the Belladonna 2 hours after your driver was ordered to change tonight's route. Adrian rose so quickly his chair rolled backward into the marble wall. This is absurd. She is facing dismissal for an $80 million discrepancy. And now she invents a conspiracy. Luca lifted one finger. Adrian stopped speaking. The silence that followed felt heavier than the gun. Evelyn reached into her leather portfolio and removed a single sheet of paper. It trembled once between her fingers, then became still. She laid it over the termination agreement Luca had brought for her. You came here to fire the accountant who cost you $80 million, she said. But $80 million is only what the traitor wanted you to notice. Luca leaned forward. The clean scent of cedar and cold tobacco crossed the table. Then put my real loss in front of me. Evelyn turned the sheet toward him. At the bottom was a payment authorization carrying Luca Moretti's encrypted signature. Approved at 2:13 that morning, while he had been asleep inside a guarded penthouse. Your real loss, she said, is that someone inside this room can sign your name, move your soldiers, and decide where you die. The digital clock struck 0. No one moved. Then Luca picked up the termination papers, tore them cleanly in half, and locked the conference room doors himself. 48 hours earlier, Evelyn Hart's access card flashed red against the accounting floor scanner. and the glass door refused to open. The denial tone chirped again, sharp and mechanical, beneath the white fluorescent lights. Behind the glass, printers hummed and keyboards clicked while employees pretended not to watch her standing in the corridor with a cardboard tray of coffee balanced against her hip. The air smelled of burnt espresso and lemon floor polish. Evelyn tried the card once more. Read. Adrian Vale appeared on the other side, immaculate in a charcoal suit, his silver cuff links catching the overhead glare. He opened the door just wide enough to step through, then let it close behind him. System maintenance, he said, taking one of the coffees from her tray without asking. Only your system? Evelyn glanced through the glass. Her desk monitor was dark. 2 information security contractors were unplugging the encrypted drive beneath it. Adrian sipped the coffee, grimaced, and dropped the cup back into the tray. Hot liquid splashed across Evelyn's wrist. You accountants notice everything except the obvious. His gaze traveled over her fitted navy skirt, paused at her waist, then returned to her face. This company is tightening its belt. Some people should understand the concept. A few muffled laughs slipped through the glass. Evelyn set the tray on a steel side table before her fingers could crush it. Why are strangers removing my ledger drive? Because $80 million disappeared from Moretti-controlled accounts with your credentials attached. Adrian produced a printed audit report and slapped it against her chest. The paper was still warm from the copier. Mr. Moretti has been informed. Evelyn read the first page without stepping aside. The transactions were formatted correctly. Her employee number appeared in every authorization field. Even her digital approval stamp sat beside the transfers. Too perfect. These approvals were entered after midnight, she said. I left at 9:17. Then perhaps you worked from home. Remote access is disabled for my clearance level. Adrian's smile narrowed. That sounds like the beginning of an excuse. He reached around her and pressed the elevator button. Its brass rim glowed amber. Go downstairs, collect whatever human resources allows you to collect, and wait for instructions. Evelyn did not enter when the elevator arrived. Cold air spilled from the mirrored car, carrying the faint smell of machine oil. Instead, she turned, lifted the red emergency cover beside the accounting door, and pulled the manual release. An alarm snapped through the corridor. Employees jerked upright as the lock disengaged. Evelyn pushed through before security could reset it. You cannot go in there, Adrian barked. She crossed the carpeted floor, her heels striking hard beneath the alarm's pulse. The contractors moved to block her desk. Evelyn planted both hands on the oak surface and shoved it sideways. The heavy desk scraped 6 inches across the floor, exposing a narrow floor safe beneath the carpet panel. She spun the dial, opened it, and removed a black handwritten ledger no network administrator could erase. Adrian's face lost its polished stillness. He grabbed for the book. Evelyn turned her shoulder, shielding it against her body. The room smelled suddenly of hot circuitry and spilled coffee. That is company property, he said. No, Evelyn replied. That is the record of what the company actually owns. 2 security officers stepped from the elevator. Adrian pointed at her as if delivering a verdict. Escort Ms. Hart out. Mr. Moretti will terminate her personally when he returns to New York. Evelyn tucked the ledger beneath her arm and walked toward them before they could touch her. At the elevator, she looked back through the flashing red light. Tell Luca Moretti to bring the full board, she said. And tell him I need 7 minutes before he fires me. Adrian's jaw tightened. For what? The elevator doors began to close. Evelyn held his gaze through the narrowing strip of light. To show him why losing $80 million is the smallest problem in this building. The The black convoy stopped beneath Moretti Tower at 8:43 the next morning, and the revolving doors froze between turns. Luca Moretti entered through the security lane without removing his leather gloves. Rainwater shone on the shoulders of his black overcoat, carrying the cold mineral smell of the street into the marble lobby. Four bodyguards moved around him in silence, their polished shoes striking the floor in a measured rhythm that made receptionists lower their voices and guards straighten behind their desks. 47 floors above them, Evelyn Hart stood alone beside the conference table with the black ledger tucked beneath one arm. The room smelled of fresh coffee, printer toner, and the sharp citrus cleaner used on the glass walls. She had been allowed back into the building under escort, but her access card remained disabled. Her office had been sealed, and a security officer waited 6 feet behind her as if a curvy accountant in a navy skirt were the most dangerous person in Manhattan. The elevator bell sounded. Once. Then the conference room doors opened. Luca walked in without greeting anyone. Adrian Vale followed half a step behind him, carrying the termination folder against his chest. The board members rose so quickly that leather chairs bumped the table and crystal water glasses rattled. Luca removed his overcoat and handed it to no one in particular. Adrian caught it before it touched the floor. "Phones," Luca said. His voice never rose. 6 executives placed their devices in a silver serving tray while one of Luca's men lowered the motorized blinds. The bright city vanished behind smoked glass, leaving the room under the cold whitewash of recessed lights. Luca looked at Evelyn last. His gaze moved from her face to the ledger pressed against her side, then to the security officer behind her. "Leave." The officer hesitated. Luca turned his head by less than an inch. The man exited at once. Evelyn set the ledger on the table but kept one hand over its cover. "Mr. Moretti, you asked for the board." Luca removed his gloves finger by finger and laid them beside the head chair. "You asked for 7 minutes. Before those 7 minutes begin, you will answer one question." Adrian placed the termination documents in front of him. The paper made a dry whisper against the walnut. Luca opened the folder, revealing Evelyn's name above a list of accusations. Unauthorized transfers, breach of fiduciary duty, concealment of losses. "Did you move $80 million? He asked. Evelyn lifted her chin. "No." "Did your credentials authorize the transfers?" "Yes." "Then either you stole from me, or someone made you look like you did." His eyes remained fixed on hers. "Both answers create the same problem." Adrian stepped forward. "Her employment agreement allows immediate dismissal and referral to federal authorities. We should secure the ledger and—" Luca raised one bare hand. Adrian's words stopped in his throat. Evelyn drew the heavy conference chair away from the table and sat, not because she had been invited, but because she refused to stand like a defendant while men discussed her disposal. The chair creaked beneath her. She opened her portfolio and arranged 3 objects in a straight line. A brass casino chip sealed in a plastic evidence sleeve, a handwritten balance sheet, and a blank legal pad. Luca's eyes narrowed at the deliberate order. "You prepared a presentation? I prepared a correction." A faint hiss came from the ventilation system. Ice clicked in an untouched water pitcher. Adrian reached toward the ledger. Evelyn closed her palm over it before his fingers arrived. "Touch it," she said, "and you erase the only reason he walks out of this building with an empire." Adrian recoiled as if the cover had burned him. Luca pulled the head chair back and sat opposite her. He removed a compact pistol from beneath his jacket, placed it beside the termination papers, and turned the weapon so the barrel pointed away from Evelyn. The soft metallic contact echoed through the room. 7 minutes, he said. One of his men activated the digital timer on the wall. Red numbers appeared above the darkened windows. 7 o'clock. Luca leaned back, his expression carved into stillness. When that reaches 0, Ms. Hart, I either tear up those papers or you leave this room with nothing. The timer clicked to 6:59, and Evelyn slid the black ledger toward the gun. At 5:41, Adrian Vale reached across the walnut table and snapped the black ledger shut beneath Evelyn's hand. The impact cracked through the conference room, louder than the timer and sharper than the ice shifting inside the water pitcher. Enough theater, he said. The silver face of his watch flashed beneath the recessed lights. She had access. Her credentials moved the money. We are wasting Mr. Moretti's time because a desperate employee learned how to stack papers. Evelyn kept her palm flat on the ledger. Adrian pressed harder, his manicured fingers whitening at the knuckles. Around them, the board members stared at their legal pads. No one looked at her face. No one looked at Luca's gun. Remove your hand, Evelyn said. Adrian's mouth curved. Or what? He leaned closer, bringing the sour bite of coffee and expensive mint across the table. You will shove me with all that strength you carry around? This is a boardroom, Evelyn, not a loading dock. A faint breath escaped one executive at the far end. It might have been a laugh. Luca did not move. His dark eyes remained on Evelyn as the timer dropped to 5:19. She released the ledger. Adrian's smile widened until she seized the printed audit report beneath his wrist, ripped the staple free, and flung 80 pages across the glass table. White sheets slid between crystal tumblers and leather folders. Several spilled onto the floor. Page 12, she said. Shipping insurance. Adrian stared at the disorder. What? Read the settlement time. Luca lifted the nearest page. Paper rasped beneath his thumb. 11:48 p.m. Evelyn pulled another sheet from beside a director's elbow. Page 31. Belladonna Casino Reserve. Luca found the line. 11:48. Page 56, she said. Real estate escrow. The timer struck 4:32. Luca's gaze moved down the column. 11:48. Evelyn stepped around the table. Her heels clicked against black marble while the ventilation pushed cold air through the room, stirring loose reports around her ankles. She collected 3 pages and placed them side by side in front of Luca. 3 separate banks. 3 clearing systems. 3 transactions approved in the same second. Adrian folded his arms. Automated batching. Evelyn picked up his untouched espresso and poured it into the center of his report. Dark liquid spread across the false totals, carrying the smell of scorched beans into the sterile air. Adrian lurched forward. Have you lost your mind? That, Evelyn said, setting the empty cup down, is what an uncontrolled loss looks like. Random, messy, difficult to contain. She tapped the identical timestamps. These transfers were synchronized, not stolen, deployed. Luca's index finger rested against the margin of the page. By someone with internal authority. By someone who expected you to see my name, stop reading, and fire me before I could explain the structure. Adrian turned toward Luca. She is manipulating you. Look at her. She has spent years sitting behind a desk, resenting everyone above her. And now she expects this room to believe she understands command. Evelyn lifted the legal pad and walked to Adrian's chair. She wrote 4 numbers in thick black strokes, tore off the sheet, and placed it directly in front of him. Add them. I do not take tests from accountants facing prosecution. Add them. His nostrils flared. The timer reached 2:58. Luca picked up the pistol, not by the grip but by the slide, and moved it away from Evelyn's side of the table. He set it beside Adrian's cuff-linked hand. Metal touched wood with a soft, final knock. Add them, Luca said. Adrian swallowed and reached for a pen. His first answer was wrong. Evelyn circled it in red. His second was wrong by $12 million. The room went still except for the timer. Evelyn turned the pad toward Luca. He signed every quarterly certification built on these totals. Luca looked at the incorrect sum, then at the man who had spent 2 days demanding Evelyn's dismissal. "Sit down, Adrian." "Luca." "Not there." Luca pointed to the narrow chair against the wall where Evelyn had been expected to wait for termination. Adrian's face tightened, but he crossed the room and sat beneath the cold fluorescent light. Luca drew the head chair back from the table and offered it to Evelyn. "You have 2 minutes, he said. "Show me what he was too incompetent or too afraid to calculate." Evelyn sat at the head of the board, opened the black ledger, and turned the first page toward the mafia boss. The timer showed 1:52 when Evelyn pulled the brass casino chip from its plastic sleeve and placed it on Luca's encrypted signature. The chip landed with a hard click, gold against black ink, while the loose audit pages stirred beneath the ceiling vents. Cold air pressed against the glass walls. The room carried the bitter smell of spilled espresso and the faint leather scent of Luca's gloves. "The 80 million was divided into 4 payment streams," Evelyn said. She drew lines across the legal pad, connecting numbers with quick, certain strokes. "Not hidden offshore, distributed inside the city." Luca leaned forward, his forearms resting beside the pistol. "To whom?" "People required to make you vulnerable without making you suspicious." She wrote the first figure. 9 million to settle private debts held by 2 judges who approve surveillance warrants. A second number followed. 14 million through consulting invoices tied to port inspectors. Enough to redirect your containers and make the losses look operational. She added a third. 22 million to a Virginia intelligence contractor that purchased your travel patterns, driver rotations, and building access logs. Adrian rose from the chair against the wall. "Those are legitimate security expenses." Evelyn turned the ledger toward him without looking away from Luca. "Then explain why every invoice was approved through your office but charged to mine." Adrian stopped. The timer dropped to 1:09. Evelyn opened the laptop waiting at the center of the table and rotated it toward Luca. Its screen cast a pale blue light across his face. She entered a sequence from memory, then pressed her thumb to the biometric reader. A warning box appeared. "Accounting clearance revoked." "My access is still blocked," she said. "Use yours." Luca removed a black metal token from his pocket and inserted it into the side port. Adrian stepped forward again. "You cannot let a terminated employee into the executive treasury." Luca typed his authorization code. The system opened. "She is not terminated yet." Evelyn's hands moved across the keyboard. She did not search for anything new. She loaded the 4 payment streams already mapped in the handwritten ledger and overlaid them against Luca's operating schedule. Red markers spread across the screen: courthouses, warehouses, casinos, security posts. Then she selected a single command and froze every pending payment. Phones began vibrating inside the silver tray, one after another. A board member's watch flashed with an emergency alert. Somewhere beyond the locked doors, office phones started ringing in overlapping bursts. Evelyn turned the laptop so Luca could see the live balance. The supposed loss had stopped falling. "The money was bait," she said. "Whoever designed this expected you to fire me, destroy the paper trail, and keep paying the people preparing to remove you." The digital timer reached midnight and released one flat electronic tone. Luca did not look at it. "What happens now that you froze the payments? The buyers panic. The people they bought start calling. And the person who authorized the structure will try to reverse it before the banks open their fraud desks." Luca's phone lit against the table. An incoming secure call filled the screen. Thomas Rinaldi. The oldest man in the room shifted beside the darkened windows. His charcoal suit was perfectly pressed, but one hand tightened around the silver head of his cane. Thomas had managed Moretti family accounts before Evelyn was hired. He had also carried 12-year-old Luca out of a burning car after the attack that killed Luca's father. Evelyn removed one final document from the ledger and put it on the table between them. The authorization bore Thomas's private seal. Not a copy. Not a digital imitation. The pressure marks had been made by the original stamp kept inside his home safe. Luca stared at the seal, then slowly lifted his eyes toward the man who had once saved his life. Thomas's secure call continued ringing from Luca's phone, even though Thomas stood less than 20 feet away. Evelyn closed the laptop. "The 80 million can be recovered," she said. "Your real loss is the man who taught you whom to trust." Luca rose from his chair, picked up the document, and crossed the room until he stood directly in front of Thomas. "Answer the phone," he said. Thomas did not move. Luca placed the ringing device into his hand. "And tell me why you paid for my funeral before I was dead." Thomas Rinaldi let Luca's secure phone ring 3 more times before pressing the green icon with his thumb. A recorded voice answered through the speaker, smooth and artificial beneath the ventilation's low hiss. "Authorization confirmed. Final transfer window opens at midnight." Thomas ended the call. The silver head of his cane struck the marble once as his grip slipped. Luca took the phone from him and set it beside the stamped document. "Who receives the final transfer?" Thomas looked toward the smoked windows instead of answering. White office light flattened the lines around his mouth, while the room smelled of cold coffee and overheated electronics. Luca reached for the pistol. Evelyn rose from the head chair. "Don't." The single word stopped his hand above the walnut. Every executive stared at her. Adrian remained against the wall, one cuff link missing, his abandoned audit pages drying beneath a brown stain of espresso. Luca turned slowly. "He purchased access to my routes. And if you remove him now, the buyer knows we found the structure." Evelyn crossed the room and took the phone from the table. Its glass was warm against her palm. "The final payment is the only reason they still believe their plan is alive." Thomas lowered his chin. "You think numbers make you qualified to decide what happens in this room?" Evelyn stepped close enough for the tip of his cane to touch her shoe. "Numbers tell me you received no personal payment. They tell me every dollar passed through you and kept moving. That means you weren't building a fortune." She placed the phone in his breast pocket. "You were buying something." Thomas's jaw worked once. Luca watched him without blinking. "Say it." The older man drew a folded handkerchief from his sleeve and wiped his damp palm. "Time," he said. "I was buying time." His voice roughened against the silence. "They approached me 6 months ago. They already had the judges and the portmen. They wanted your authentication chain. I gave them controlled access and kept the transfers visible enough for someone competent to find." Adrian pushed off the wall. "That is convenient." Thomas glanced at him. "I expected the chief financial officer to notice." Evelyn closed the black ledger. The heavy cover landed with a muffled thud. "He noticed. He needed me gone before I could prove it." Adrian lunged for the conference room door. Luca's nearest bodyguard caught him by the shoulder and drove him back into the chair without drawing a weapon. Leather scraped across marble. Adrian's breath came fast through his nose. Luca picked up the termination folder and looked at Evelyn. "Your recommendation." It was not a question. Evelyn returned to the table and pulled the unsigned dismissal agreement from beneath the gun. "Fire me." A murmur passed around the board. Luca's expression did not change, but his fingers tightened around the folder. "Explain." Adrian expects me to leave humiliated. Thomas's buyers expect the paper trail to disappear with me. Give them both what they want. She turned the agreement toward Luca and placed a pen across it. Announce that I manipulated the accounts. Freeze my company credentials. Escort me out through the lobby where every employee can see it. And after midnight, you allow the final transfer to begin. Thomas confirms it. Adrian contacts whoever hired him. I reverse the money after it reaches the receiving network, when they can no longer pretend they were innocent vendors. Luca studied her for a long moment as the building's pipes clicked behind the walls. Then he signed the dismissal. The pen scratched loudly across her name. Adrian smiled from the chair. Luca tore the executive access token from his key ring and pressed the black metal device into Evelyn's palm beneath the edge of the table, hidden from everyone except her. Its ridged surface bit into her skin. MS. Heart is terminated effective immediately, he announced. 2 guards moved toward her. Evelyn tucked the ledger under her arm and walked between them without lowering her head. At the door, Luca's voice followed her through the cold room. At midnight, Evelyn decides what this empire can afford to lose. Evelyn crossed the marble lobby between 2 armed guards while 300 employees watched her career collapse in silence. Camera shutters clicked near the revolving doors. Someone's phone began recording. The brass casino chip remained hidden inside her fist, its ridged edge biting into her palm as the guards guided her through a curtain of cold morning air toward a waiting black sedan. Adrian stood behind the lobby glass, smoothing his silver cuff links with a smile meant for her to see. Evelyn entered the car without looking back. The door sealed with a heavy thud, muting the traffic and replacing the smell of rain with black leather and cedar. Luca sat opposite her. His overcoat lay beside him, and the termination folder rested unopened across one knee. That performance will reach every Moretti property within 10 minutes, he said. Good. Evelyn placed the black ledger between them. It needs to reach the people buying your collapse. The sedan moved into traffic. Gray buildings slid across the tinted windows while tires hissed over wet pavement. Luca watched the red mark the casino chip had left in her palm. He reached toward her hand, then stopped before touching it. Adrian humiliated you in front of the entire company. Adrian showed me exactly how confident he feels. Evelyn opened the ledger and drew a line through his authorization column. Confidence makes people careless. 20 minutes later, a private elevator carried them into Luca's penthouse above Central Park. The doors opened onto limestone floors, dark walnut walls, and windows tall enough to turn Manhattan into a field of cold silver light. The air smelled faintly of wood smoke from a low fireplace, for security monitors glowed inside a hidden operations room behind the library. Evelyn entered, removed her shoes, and set them beneath the console. The carpet felt thick beneath her stockinged feet. I need 3 terminals, access to every Moretti reserve account, and authority to suspend any transfer without asking permission. Luca removed his jacket. You already have the token. The token lets me enter. Authority makes people obey when they dislike my answer. He stepped to the biometric panel and pressed his thumb against the glass. A green light swept across his face. Executive override granted to Evelyn Hart, the system announced. She sat before the center terminal. Luca pulled another chair beside her, but she pushed it back with one foot. Not beside me. His eyebrows lifted. Excuse me? Behind me, where you can see every move without reaching over my shoulder. The room went quiet except for server fans and the soft crackle of burning wood beyond the wall. Luca moved the chair behind hers. Evelyn inserted his black metal token and began rebuilding the transfer architecture from the handwritten ledger. She created holding accounts, withdrawal barriers, and a reversal chain designed to activate only after the final payment exposed every recipient. Figures poured across the monitors in green and white. Luca read without interrupting. When she reached the final authorization screen, she stopped. Your approval ends here. You asked for full control. I asked for the power to protect your money. I will not imitate the people stealing your name. She rotated the keyboard toward him. Luca entered his code, then placed the termination folder beside her. You could leave after this, he said. Take whatever fee you name. Disappear before midnight. Evelyn opened the folder. His signature cut through the dismissal line in dark ink. She tore the agreement once, then again, dropping the pieces into the steel wastebasket. You still think the money is what placed me at that table. Then tell me what did. She turned her chair toward him. Firelight moved across his white shirt sleeves, and the monitors cast a blue edge along his jaw. For 8 years, I made your companies look legitimate while men like Adrian spoke over me, laughed at my body, and took credit for my work. You walked in prepared to believe them because their suits fit your idea of power. Luca lowered his gaze to the torn papers. I was wrong. The admission landed more heavily than an apology. Evelyn stood and placed the casino chip in his hand. Then prove you learned something. A security clock above the terminals changed to 11:40 p.m. The final transfer window would open in 20 minutes. Luca closed his fingers around the chip. Name your condition. Evelyn met his eyes. At the Belladonna tonight, you do not hide me behind your guards or introduce me as the accountant you fired. You put me at your table, give me control in front of every man who expects me gone, and follow my instructions when the money starts moving. The elevator chimed in the hall, announcing the convoy waiting below. Evelyn slipped her shoes back on and reached for the black ledger. You have 20 minutes to trust me in public, she said, or lose your empire in private. At 11:58 p.m., Luca walked Evelyn through the Belladonna's private casino with his hand at her back and every armed man in the room watching. Gold chandeliers burned above velvet tables. Roulette balls clicked against polished wheels. Jazz murmured beneath the ceiling, and the air tasted of cigar smoke, chilled champagne, and money that had passed through too many hands. Luca did not place her behind his guards. He pulled out the chair at the head of the baccarat table and waited until she sat. The black ledger rested beneath her palm. Adrian Vale stood across the room beside 3 executives who had attended her dismissal, his smile sharp beneath the amber light. The fired accountant returns, he said. Did Moretti bring you here to apologize before the banks bury you? Evelyn opened Luca's laptop. No. He brought me here to calculate what you're worth. Midnight struck. The casino lights dimmed for one breath, and every screen on the private floor flashed red. Final transfer initiated. $80 million began moving through the network Evelyn had mapped, splitting into hundreds of payments faster than the eye could follow. Luca's guards reached inside their jackets as the elevator doors opened behind them. Men from Moretti warehouses, casinos, and port crews entered wearing black coats, but they did not move toward Adrian. They surrounded Luca's table. Adrian lifted a glass of champagne. You should have fired her sooner. Luca's hand settled near his pistol. Evelyn caught his wrist. Don't. The nearest guard looked at her as if she had forgotten her place. Luca did not pull away. Follow her instructions, he said. Adrian's smile vanished for half a second. Then 2 men seized Evelyn's chair and dragged it away from the table. The laptop cable tore free. The screen went black. One of them forced her into the casino's counting room, where fluorescent tubes buzzed above steel shelves stacked with sealed currency. The temperature dropped 20 degrees. Paper dust and machine oil coated the back of her throat. Adrian followed and locked the reinforced door. Reverse the freeze, he said. placing a security token beside the counting machine. Complete the transfer, and you walk out. Evelyn glanced at the wall clock. 12:03. You still think the 80 million belongs to Luca? It belongs to whoever controls it. Exactly. She took the token. Adrian leaned closer, certain he had one. Evelyn inserted it into the counting room terminal and entered the reversal sequence she had built at the penthouse. The machine beside her roared to life, spitting blank currency bands across the steel table. Adrian watched the screen as the transfers accelerated. What did you do? I let the money reach every account you promised. Green confirmation lines filled the monitor. Then each one changed direction. Funds poured back through holding companies Evelyn controlled, but they did not return to the original Moretti reserves. They moved into payroll accounts belonging to the crews now surrounding Luca. Bonuses, debt settlements, medical funds, families paid in full. Adrian grabbed the keyboard. Evelyn swept the security token off the desk and dropped it into the narrow slot of the industrial shred bin. The machine swallowed it with a metallic grind. You bought their loyalty with Luca's money, he said. No, Evelyn pressed the final authorization. You rented their betrayal. I just showed them who pays on time. Outside the locked room, heavy footsteps changed direction. The men who had entered beside Adrian lowered their weapons and turned toward his private guards. No shots followed. Only commands, the scrape of shoes across marble, and the soft collapse of Adrian's certainty. Luca unlocked the counting room door from the outside. He entered alone, his white shirt collar open beneath his black jacket. Evelyn handed him the laptop. The restored balance glowed across the screen, larger than before. Your cash is intact, she said. Your soldiers are paid. His network belongs to you. Luca looked past her at Adrian, then back at the curvy accountant he had arrived intending to discard. He closed the laptop and placed it in Evelyn's hands. Not to me, he said. The casino doors opened behind him. Every captain, executive, and guard waited beneath the gold chandeliers. Luca stepped aside, leaving Evelyn at the front. They followed your money, he said. Now let them see who controls it. Evelyn stepped beneath the belladonna's central chandelier carrying the laptop in one hand and the black ledger in the other. Gold light moved across her navy dress. The polished marble chilled the soles of her feet through her shoes, and the last notes of the jazz quartet faded beneath the soft mechanical clicking of casino tables gone still. Men who had ignored her in Moretti Tower now formed two silent lines from the counting room door to the baccarat table. Luca followed several paces behind, not leading her, not shielding her, allowing every captain and executive to understand exactly whose orders had saved them. Evelyn set the laptop on the green felt and turned the screen toward the room. Your payroll cleared, she said. Your medical accounts are funded. Every debt purchased to control you has been discharged. She opened the black ledger beside it. The thick pages carried the smell of ink and old paper through the cigar smoke. Adrian Vale used $80 million to rent your loyalty. I returned the money to the people who earned it. Adrian stood between two guards near the roulette wheel, his loosened tie hanging crooked against his collar. She stole Moretti funds and bought an audience, he said. Evelyn removed his signed quarterly certifications and placed them across the table one by one. Paper struck felt in a steady rhythm. You approved false totals, blamed my credentials, and tried to erase the physical ledger before Luca could see the structure. She added his security token receipt, his consulting authorizations, and the termination recommendation bearing his signature. You wanted me fired because you needed him angry enough to stop counting. Adrian looked toward Luca. I protected this organization for 12 years. Luca approached the table. His black shoes made no sound on the carpet, but the captain straightened as he passed. You protected your position, he said. She protected my empire after I brought a gun to her meeting. Adrian's mouth opened. Luca raised one hand. 2 guards escorted the former chief financial officer toward the elevator. No one argued. Thomas Rinaldi waited beside the darkened bar, both hands resting on his silver cane. Evelyn carried the final authorization document to him and laid it on the polished counter. Amber light from the liquor shelves shone through the paper. Your delay gave me time to find the pattern, she said. But you signed away Luca's name without trusting him with the truth. Thomas removed his Moretti signet ring. Metal touched wood with a quiet click. Then I no longer deserve to use it. Luca accepted the ring but did not return it to his pocket. You will retire under protection. No accounts. No authority. No secrets. Thomas inclined his head once and walked toward the private exit, his cane striking marble in slow, even beats. When the doors closed, Luca returned to the baccarat table and placed 3 objects before Evelyn. The termination papers he had signed, the black executive token, and the Moretti signet ring. Then he took a leather document case from his attorney. Read it, he said. Evelyn opened the case. The first page appointed her chief financial authority over every legitimate Moretti company. The second granted her veto power over all underworld expenditures. The third gave her an ownership stake no accountant in the organization had ever held. She looked up. This is not an apology. No, Luca moved the head chair away from the table and positioned a second chair beside it, equal in height and distance. An apology would leave me in charge of deciding your value. He faced the assembled captains. From this night forward, no transfer moves, no debt is purchased, and no business is opened without Evelyn Hart's approval. Anyone who calls her an employee answers to me. Anyone who dismisses her judgment answers to her. He placed the signet ring in her palm and closed her fingers around it. The ridged gold no longer cut like the casino chip had. It warmed against her skin. Evelyn sat in the chair beside his and reopened the ledger. Luca remained standing until she nodded once, granting him permission to take his place. Around them, the men who had watched her public dismissal lowered their eyes and waited for her first instruction. Evelyn pushed the torn termination papers into the center of the table, struck a silver lighter, and let the false accusations curl into harmless ash inside a crystal tray. Luca had entered her boardroom prepared to calculate the price of losing $80 million, but Evelyn made him understand that his real loss would have been the woman sitting beside him.